In this video, I'm gonna be assembling and finally finishing this fighter. But first, I need to re-gun blue the blade. So stick to the end and see this thing completely finished up and put together. So the bluing did not work out properly on the blade. The nickel darkened up quite a bit and has kind of a straw slash deep purple color. And it might be a really cool look if it doesn't come out what I was imagining. I was imagining the nickel would stay real bright. I didn't realize the bluing salts would actually affect it. I also learned that the bluing possibly needs a little while to like completely set up, because the bluing looked perfect along the edge, but then I was wiping it with my paper towel and it completely like smeared it and was rubbing off a little bit. And I've seen this before, but I've never caught it in the act. This time I saw it happen right in front of my eyes, and could be a tremendous learning experience, because I've had to redo fittings so many times before when this happened and I didn't know why it happened. There's just like this smear out of nowhere because I smeared it as I was rinsing it. So I was really looking into it a bunch, and Mom found out some stuff that you're supposed to like really leave it alone for like 12 or 24 hours after the bluing, and not wipe on it or anything, and let all that oxide on there like completely set up before you start rubbing it down. So I'm gonna really test that out in the future. Right now I'm working on the pommel, and I'm gonna do some different stuff, put it in the bluing salts a little less time to see if we can get the nickel to maybe not color quite so much, and see how that goes. And I'm testing it out with the pommel because it's much easier to refinish the pommel than it is the blade. Probably should have started with that, because this blade takes like a day to get it back to the state it was at, whereas the pommel should only take like an hour or two to get it back ready to test again. If we get the pommel good, I'm gonna move on to the guard, and we're gonna get that out of the way. We're gonna get the pommel nut done. There's no Damascus on the pommel nut, so that should be the easiest piece in the project. We'll get these fittings done if I can come out with a good finish on this. I've got a cup of distilled water here, and take it out, rinse it off in that, and then we'll put it in the bluing salts. I'm just gonna take this whole assembly. I'm gonna get it in there quickly so that the part isn't like hot out in the air and gets like dried out minerals from the water and stuff on it. Like I'll stick it right here where it's boiling really, really well. That's definitely not long enough. The blued steel isn't, blued steel's definitely not there yet. Also, the finish looked really bad, but I don't know if it's just because it was only in there a minute. Like, really, it looked fuzzy. It looked like you lost signal and you're watching TV with an antenna and all you saw was fuzz. I need to let the pommel sit for a little bit before we can inspect it. I want to make sure those oxides set. Ideally, I'm thinking it would be better for hours to go by, but I don't have that kind of time, so we're gonna give it a little bit, and while that's curing and setting up, I'm going to buff this pommel nut, get it cleaned up, and blue it. Got the pommel nut cleaned, ready to go in the salts. Take the pommel nut out and rinse it off. Looks really good right now when it's wet. Perfect. Okay, a recap on what's going on with the bluing. The bluing didn't come out the way I wanted on the blade, so I decided to work on the pommel because it'd be a lot easier to redo the bluing on the pommel over and over instead of the blade. So I blued the pommel a couple times, got it looking really, really good, but then I was looking at it under some really bright lights, and it has this really weird hazy spottiness, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I found a little scrap of Damascus from this same billet and polished the end of it, and then went on to run a series of tests. And when I say a series, I spent all day yesterday. I probably blued this little sample piece like 15 times, trying different things out and everything. And what I found out was, I think it's the cleaning solution causing this steel to get this really weird like texture when you have it on really bright lights. So it may have something to do with it being high carbon steel, and also the fact that it's not hardened, because the blade didn't have that weird spotty haziness all over, but it's high carbon steel that's hardened. I don't know if that's affecting what the cleaning solution is doing. And then my regular bluing isn't being affected either, because yesterday we also blued the pommel nut And that isn't Damascus, and it came out perfect the first time. And you don't see any weird spottiness under the lights. So the next step is to sand the bluing off the pommel, even though it looks absolutely perfect right now under regular lighting. Like I said, it's just under really bright lighting that doesn't look good, and I want it to look good under all the lighting. So I'm gonna sand the bluing off, and we're gonna blue it again, and I'm gonna try it without the cleaner, because using my little test piece, that seemed like it got me the best results as far as that weird problem I was running into. I'm a little hesitant to not use cleaner though, because the cleaner really helps remove oils and get the steel really nice and clean. So if I have some little oil residues or something on the pommel when I go to blue it, it could leave some streaks of another kind and also end up having to re-blue it. So kind of trapped either way you go with this currently, but we're gonna try it anyway. I'm just gonna try to get it really, really clean with Dawn dish soap and try not to get any fingerprints or anything on it and get it into that bluing salt. Nope. Okay, it's blowing the water right at me. Perfect.
The next day.
Got all the bluing sanded off with some 3000 grit sandpaper, and I went through and buffed the blade again. It's super nice and shiny. Need to get it really, really, really clean and get it back in the bluing salts for our second attempt. I just finished bluing this blade for the second time, and it's not gonna work. There's some blotches towards the tip that look pretty bad, and the only way to fix it is for me to sand all the bluing off and to try again for a third time. Last time when I put the blade in the salts, it sucked some of the heat out, and it took a couple of minutes for the heat to rise back up. This time I want a good aggressive boil so that when the blade sucks some of the heat out, that it's still boiling, and maybe that'll help with the blotch problem. That tip isn't fitting in there. Hopefully having that much of the clamp in there is not a problem. Mom cleaned it really well though. Ooh, that's looking good.
2,000 years later.
The fighter is finally ready for assembly. I've spent nearly 2 months on this piece and it's almost done. I just got done sharpening it, got it razor sharp, shaved all the hair off of the side of both of my legs, and it's ready to go. I've got all the parts clean, the bluing looks beautiful. I went over the handle really lightly with the buffer again just to touch it up, make sure it all looks really good. We're gonna start with the guard, get that on the blade, and then the handle, then the pommel, and then tighten up the pommel nut, and hopefully I'll be able to get that pommel nut oriented to the proper position where it goes, because it's asymmetrical, so it needs to go to the exact proper position, and I'm a little nervous about that. Hopefully nothing's changed in the build. We'll go with the guard first. Okay, that's on there. We'll let the handle push the guard on all the way when we put the pommel nut on. Next, we've got the handle. Oh man, this thing's gonna look so good with this fiery orange colored handle. Whoa, pommel on there, pommel nut. Nothing like getting the hammer out when you're doing the final assembly on something you've spent so much time. I'm gonna loosen this a little bit, make sure the pommel is seated properly. Not a lot of room right there, the pommel. The pommel almost touches the takedown tool. Okay, I'm not liking this too much. I need to go a little bit further. It's a really tight fit, so I might need to take the pommel nut off and put a little bit more oil on it to help it get that final little bit of rotation. Looking back when I designed this, I maybe shouldn't have made it go so tight to where it needs to index to, because it's a little overkill, and in order to get it that tight sometimes I almost break the little prongs off my takedown tool. I had Josh put a little drop of oil in the pommel nut while I was holding it off camera. Put it back on and see how that feels. Broke that. I go ahead and remake my takedown tool by putting some new pins in the center of it instead of the end. Drum roll, please. I don't know what kind of, was that a drum roll or a machine gun? Whoa. I've not seen it with the bluing done on the blade and the fittings and the handle all completed yet. Like I haven't even seen it all put together since I got the handle buffed. Oh my goodness. Look at that. This is one of my favorite knives. I know I say that about every time, but it's true. Once again, this is one of my favorite knives. Oh man. I love it. It looks so cool. This handle, this fiery, bright color in the handle just pops with all this dark Damascus going on here. Oh man, it's done. Wow. There wasn't one part of this knife that was the most challenging. There was two that I feel like were pretty equal in challenge, and that was the super curvy blade and fittings and all the weird things that happen with fitting up curvy handle fit and everything. And then the other one that's equal to that was getting these blued finishes to come out the way I wanted. I had to do it over and over again, and it took a lot of time, but I think it was worth it because this thing looks so cool. So dark and sinister, and then you get up close and you see that really cool colored Damascus pattern with the pure nickel in there and the fittings and that bright colored handle. The handle's just fiery. It really reminds me of just fire burning. I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye bye.